Can you tell us, first of all, a little bit about Helen Dugdale and Laura Chipper? What do you know about these two women?
Yes, well, these two women were our founding police officers, so they started in 1917. And, when they started, their criteria, I look at that now compared to where we are now, so they had to be between 25 and 30 years. Mm-hmm. They had to have a nursing background. So, and that was right up until about 1950 before they actually stopped that. And they were... the majority of why they were there was for moral welfare of women and children, and particularly young girls. So they were out patrolling the streets and helping with wayward girls and children. OK, so that's a fairly narrow pool from which to draw from, isn't it? So nursing expertise, aged between 25 and 30. Very much so. And the other part of that, of course, looking at society, was they couldn't be married. And that continued right up until the mid-70s. We had to actually resign if we wanted to marry. Right up until the 70s? That's correct, yes. Extraordinary. What about yourself, Jo? When did you first join the force? I joined in 1988. I came through the recruit school. I didn't have a previous history or a cadetship through police. And it was something that I always wanted to do. I was actually at high school, and we had one of the police officers come and give us a bit of a talk, and I thought, geez, what a wonderful career. Did you have policing in the blood? Did anyone else in the family? No, not at all. Not at all? No. So how was that received when you went home and you said, I'm going to be a police person? Well, like anything, I think when we think about policing, it's a very respectable career, and my family were very proud. A little bit worried, I think, as a young girl going into such a dangerous profession, but nonetheless, it was embraced by my family. Can you give us a little bit of a contrast as to your own training back then in the 80s when you joined the police force? Yeah. Compared to what it would be for a woman joining the police force now? What sort of contrast there would be in the training, for example? Look, I think the training back then is very, very similar to how it is now, although it's progressed and we've got best practice, I think. But, our training was very much in contrast with our male counterparts, very much unlike it was previously. So, we had to be physically fit. We had to be in command and control and leadership styles of men, but we also had to have that nurturing and caring nature, I think, that society expected from us. What about the uniforms? How have the uniforms changed over the journey for female police officers? Well, it wasn't until, again, in the mid-70s where the major changes occurred. Up until then, there wasn't really much of a uniform. And in 1970s, the officers went... Well, what we stopped was the women's police unit, and then women were accepted in through the recruit schools as they are today. So they went through, and the uniform of the day back then was a dress and a pair of high heels, and they were given a handbag. So I was speaking to somebody who's working with me, so this is how recent it is, who gave me a great story about her handbag days. And she was actually working in Hay Street Mall and effected arrest. And at the time we had the handbags because there was nowhere to put our handcuffs. We couldn't wear them on our dresses, so the bags were given to us to actually hold our handcuffs. But, of course, we had to lock them. So here she is effecting an arrest in Hay Street Mall and had to bend down, put her handbag on the ground, unlock her handbag, which was quite difficult, and then take the handcuffs out and then effect the arrest. So, if the offender had run off, I don't quite know what she was going to do. Given also that in the skirt and the heels as well. Exactly, would have been quite an ordeal. Yes, it was. It's amazing how much things have changed. What about some of the stories you're hearing from former women officers in the collation of all of this information and uniforms and everything else, Jo? What are some of the stories you've heard from them or their families? And you're right, Peter. The Celebrating is sharing the stories of our 100 years, so we're really, really interested from anybody out there that can share some great stories with us from, all families and friends. But I was talking to an officer of recent times, and we were only allowed to start to wear pants back in the early 80s. And when that came about, one of the officers was talking to me the other day, and she said, when I first got my pants, Jo, I was only allowed to wear them on night shift. I wasn't allowed to be seen in them. So the stories are amazing. But, back then, it is what it is. And it wasn't that the girls felt that they were hard done by, it was a reflection of society and the way we were back then.
We're speaking with Commander Jo McCabe from the WA Police, women in the police force. It's been 100 years since women were allowed into the police force in WA. And in the introduction, Jo, I spoke about those families that might have family members who had served previously, might have old uniforms, paraphernalia, newspaper clippings. You'd love to get your hands on those. How do people get in contact with you?
Oh, look, they can get in contact with us by going to the website, which is police.wa.gov.au, and there'll be a link on there, Women in Policing 100 Years, and there's an email address. We would love it, absolutely love it, and we encourage anybody, family, friends, relatives, to, write to us, let us know if they've got any of those old newspaper clippings or photos of families.
And how can members of the public share in the celebration, get along and see the important contribution of women in the police force over the last 100 years? Where can we go to see some of this paraphernalia?
Yeah, well, look, we're doing a number of things over the years, and most of it considered as business as usual, but we will be putting a really high emphasis on our 100 years. So the Anzac March will be one, and we're in preparation now to have a really strong female contingent in our march. But we've also got, of course, which we do every year, is the Royal Show. And this year, the theme will be our 100 years. So those uniforms, clippings, photos, we can have them displayed right through there for everyone to see.
Thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Thank you.